Practical landing page design, advice for non-designers. So frequently, about twice a month on these landing page, on these marketing chats, we do what's known as landing page reviews. And so what we're doing in a landing page review is we are looking at pages submitted to us live and giving them advice on the design, on the copy, on the entirety of the campaign. And I find that along each of those axes, the design, the copy, and just the overall campaign that's being run for sharing or for the contest, there's just a set of common advice that we're always giving people. And the advice is generally aimed at people who are either not designers in the case of design, not copywriters in the case of copy, not experts at setting up contest campaigns. But it's okay, because everybody, in our lives and our jobs, we get asked to do these things, and our jobs are always more than we are trained to be. And so you have to know a little bit about design, you have to know a little bit about copywriting, you have to know a little bit about running a great campaign. So what we wanted to do was to start distilling these things down into some practical advice along each of those three segments. This is the first of those three segments we're doing, practical landing page design, advice for non-designers. And our goal here, at Kickoff Labs, is to take some of that advice that we feel like we're telling you on a weekly basis on here's some things to change about your landing page design. Here's how you can make it more optimized for conversions. Here's how you can make it feel more trustworthy by just changing some things about the design or following some simple rules. And we've said the same thing over and over again. And we said, let's just write it down, and let's write it down. Let's have a couple of blog posts on it, which we've published, and you can check out the blog posts, and we'll link to those in the recap that goes out. And we're also going to do a webinar that walks through this practical landing page design, because this is advice that we give, I think, literally every week on these on these landing page reviews that we do them. Is that right, Laura Lee?
Yeah, we see these. You'll have to excuse my voice, I'm sick. But yes, we see the same things over and over each week. And so this will hopefully be something that will, maybe not everything will help you in what we're going to cover, but we see it so often that there will be multiple things, I think, that you'll see that will be really helpful.
Great. And so who you just heard is Laura Lee Flores. She's a web designer here at Kickoff Labs. She's been giving some great feedback in all of the landing page reviews over the last year that she's been a part of. And so she's been the one responsible for driving this content that you see. And she's done a great job on the blog posts and putting together the demonstration you'll see in the second half of this webinar. I'm Josh Leggaard, the co-founder of Kickoff Labs. If you didn't know, Kickoff Labs is a great solution for you to create amazing viral contests. People use our software to create product launches, to do evergreen marketing campaigns, to do giveaways, to get people to share and spread the word about their company. And that's really what we specialize in, is that part that's the referral contest, the referral competition, getting somebody to share with 3 of their friends and rewarding them for doing so. But part of our campaign building does involve typically building a landing page or a contest page for the campaign. And so that's why we have to focus on making sure people understand how to design these things properly. So hopefully it's been enough of an intro. We've got a number of people who've joined us live, and I want to say thank you to the people that have joined us live. I will check back to the chat at the end for questions, but please post them along the way. So if you've got questions, post them as we go, and at the end or in the middle, we'll take a break before we switch to the demo and answer the questions, and then we'll do the demo at the end of kind of building a page, rebuilding a page in our case that we think was poorly designed on our own, that we're going to take a second shot at after following some of these principles and see how much better it turned out just by following some of this advice. So having said that, let's talk about the general design guidelines, things that we see over and over again. The first mistake that I see people make all the time is that they create pages that are not readable. And what I mean by not readable is that the colors, as you can see in the example, is not readable. The colors interfere with the background image there. The fonts might be too small to read. The fonts just might be not readable in general. There might be an issue with grammar or spelling. anything you can think of that makes it harder for someone to comprehend what you are writing down is the first thing that turns people away. Because if I can't read any content on your page, I'm not going to try really hard to do so. So I won't even get to the next thing that I would talk about, which is that once you make it readable, it should answer why I think are the three basic questions. What is it you're offering? Why the person should sign up, and how they do so. So in these two examples I've got here, the first example I think is obvious why it's not readable. I think it's a combination of two things. The text is got some white in the background to it, and it's just the background makes it, you want to focus on the faces, not the text. And then some of the text is just really small to read, and it's just really hard to understand what's in there. In that second example that I posted, they do a great job of the readability because they kept the text a darker color over a white background, which is always going to be more readable. They have a what, which is win a free t-shirt quilt. And you can also tell that they say several times, t-shirt quilt, win a free t-shirt quilt. We're giving away a free t-shirt quilt every 5 days. That these are quilts made out of t-shirts. So it becomes that they beat it over your head. And I think that that's important because while it may seem repetitive to you as somebody who works in your business, it is not repetitive to somebody who knows nothing about you. You really have to over-explain what your offering is. Why they should sign up, that's another example in this image. They're giving away a free t-shirt quilt every 5 days. Enter your email address for a chance to win. Great, that's why I should sign up. It's pretty obvious. I'm entering a competition or contest here. How do I sign up? Also, they did a great job here too because it's just a simple form, and the form's got a nice orange call out to it. I could step back, and I'll talk about this later. I could step back from the call to action 10 feet, and I could find the sign up form. It's right underneath that copy. And so, to summarize this first point, make it readable and make sure that the text on the page answers what it is, why somebody should sign up, and how they should sign up. And now that's gotten a little bit into copywriting. We are going to talk about copywriting in a few weeks, but for now, it's a hugely important part of the design is the readability and making sure those questions are answered prominently in your design. The next thing is a little bit of a summary of some of the advice to come. If you are not a designer, my advice that I see and that I have to follow myself because I'm not a designer, but I could be dangerous with a website builder like ours, with a landing page builder like we have, is that there is a temptation to add and add and add, to add copy, to add fonts, to add font sizes, to do highlights, to do call outs, to do more colors, to add animations. And I think it might be overcompensating for a lack of design knowledge in some cases. And that's what it feels like when I look at some pages that I see, is that if you are not a designer, the best thing you could do for your landing page designs and even for your website designs or just designs in general is to take the existing templates that were presumably built by a designer and approved by a designer and don't try and do too much with them. Keep what you're doing really simple. Keep with the font styles that are there, or just if you change the fonts, pick one style. Don't change font typography sizes back and forth frequently. I see it all the time. People will have a headline in one size, the next line will be a second size, the next line will be a third size, and the next line, like literally 4 lines of text in 4 different sizes. I see it all the time. Do not do that. Use as little copy as is required to get people to convert, and to collect only data that's required. So when you look at a form, do you really need first name, last name, birthplace, current city of residence, phone number, or really you're just signing somebody up for an email list, you just want their first name and email address. The shorter the form, the better. Limiting the colors and animations, we'll talk more about that as we go. But just, I emphasize this, and I called out these things again because I want people to focus on that you're better off doing less in the area of design if you are not yourself a designer. So let's talk about each of these a little bit more. Colors. I would focus on choosing 1 or 2 primary colors on a landing page, with each color having a role. Now, what do we mean by having a role? you can see in this case is a great example. It's a landing page done by a company called Acompli, which was purchased for $200 million plus by Microsoft, and it is their Outlook app for iPhone. So it's Outlook for iPhone is started out as Acompli. They had a Kickoff Labs site promotion they were running before they launched, and what they did on this site was the white and the bold was for their copy. It was for reading on the page, and most of the page had this dark feel to it, but the white was for the copy. The gold yellow color, I'll call it gold. Laura Lee probably has 50 more color explanations for the color that I do. I'll simply call it gold. The goldish color, or goldish, the goldish color on the site is for calls to action. And you can see the call to action then stands out. It's just email request, and then they've got a secondary call to action here, which is to watch the video. And so this page, and if I'd scrolled down and showed more of it, it kept that consistency throughout, where there was just 1 to 2 colors. One color was for the fonts to be readable. The second color was for calls to action throughout the page, things they wanted you to do or steps they wanted the user to take. And again, this is a mistake I see people use. Their logo might only have 2 colors in it, and they'll use 10 different colors on their landing pages, and there's no reason to do that. The call to action. So this is the place where people take action on your landing page, the button they click, the email address they submit, the place where you want the step that you want them to complete at this particular stage. And that could be to share the page, it could be to sign up. But this call to action should be visible. And my general rule, what I tell people all the time, open your landing page. Great. Step back from your computer 10 feet. Look at your computer, close your eyes for about 10 seconds, open your eyes, and where do your eyes go? And if your eyes don't take you immediately to where you want people to take action, then I would go back and change the call to action so that it is viewable from 10 feet away without distractions that take people in. This is just an example we pulled up of one of our customers here. And you can just see, like, again, there's a simple use of colors to go back to the previous thing. There's 2 main colors on it. They did take the logo color. It is the logo color, but they use that as the call to action color for the Get Free course. And they used one font style on this page here. And so you can see there's just one main font style, but there's nothing that distracts you from the call to action. The font is large enough to be readable, but it doesn't take away from the call to action. I could walk 10 feet away. You can see it on the tiny webinar screen that you're probably watching this through right now. It is obvious to find. Let's talk about fonts. Pick one font style and limit variations in size, color, and emphasis. What I don't want to see is people doing what I saw on this page before we had a chance to look at it, which is that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 7 different font styles on this tiny little page. I think literally every line on this page has a separate font style. And it's frankly, it's distracting from the call to action because it's not pleasing to the eyes. It makes it harder to read. And it's not adding emphasis like you think it is. Like, you think that I'm doing this to add emphasis, but when you add emphasis to everything, you're adding emphasis to nothing. And so that's why, if you're gonna have multiple fonts, maybe a second one for the logo, or just a second one for one particular headline, or for like large headlines, but not literally 7 within this tiny amount of space and page font styles and colors. And when I say this, I'm not just talking about the font family that you're looking at, which would be the name of the font, whether that's Arial or Helvetica, any of the font names you might have heard of. I'm also talking about the sizes and the colors of the fonts and the use of bold italics for emphasis. Those are also things you should limit your choices in if you are not a designer. So pick one and dramatically limit the variations in size, color, and emphasis on the page. White space. I love this example. It was one of the things I learned early on myself, doing some reading about design, was the importance of white space. And I think Laura Lee came up with this great example for the blog post here. just using one of our sample pages that we have, or a default copy on the pages. And she took out all the white space on the left of the page, and you can see what it looks like. And then on the page on the right, it is the exact same copy on the page, the exact same content, but now we've added the white space back to the page. And it's just more visually pleasing. Like on the first page, honestly, I look at it, it kind of gives me a little bit of a headache to look at it. The second page is like relaxing, and you want people to not be driven away, to be pushed away by something feeling more complicated than it is, and it makes it feel simpler. It's the same copy, it just feels simpler and easier to understand on the right side because it has some white space. And so what I mean by white space is, if you didn't follow, literally just the padding. You can see some padding above the logo, below the form. Above this copy is literally white space. Below this is the white space, and then the space here above this copy. And yes, that pushes things down further on the page, but if you've got a pleasing page, there's a couple things to note. One, the call to action really didn't get pushed down too far. It'll still be on the top when somebody views this page from their computer. I'll be able to see it from 10 feet away, like I said, but the page itself is going to feel more like I want to scroll and look at it. It's not going to feel like a wall of text on the page. And so just think about the spacing, and just if you're not a designer and you think, oh, I want to get everything on the page and I don't want people to have to scroll. No, let people scroll, give people some space, and let the content, it honestly adds more emphasis to your content that's here, instead of each piece of content fighting for attention on the page. And that's not what you want. You don't want content fighting for attention on the page that you design. So there's a lot to talk about images, and there's a lot on the slide. I don't want to read it all to you guys. It will go out with the resources and a recap we send out early next week for this webinar. But let's talk about the image guidelines. The biggest thing that I see people doing with images is either, and they should be complementary to the text. The text is the most important thing on your page that's there. The images need to complement that text, and you can see, in the examples here that I've given, the first one says built-in device charging technology, and the image is a phone with a charging cable sticking out of it. The next one says the smart bike that makes you perform better, and there's a picture of a cyclist going on the page. It looks like he could be going fast. The next text says learn how to body paint, and there's somebody who's got face paint, but it's pretty close to the concept of body painting in the example, and so I'll give them a point for the body paint example there, showing some paint on a person in that space. We had some examples of opposites. I didn't throw them in the slides. They're in the blog post. You can see some of the examples of what it feels like when the text isn't complementary to the image, but you want to make it complementary. And the other part to that that's in the context of being complementary to the text is the text is not meant to be complementary to the image, meaning that you can't rely on people viewing the image in place of the text. The text is what's most important. The images are there to back up the text, what you're doing. And images are really powerful. They draw people's attention, but they have to be able to read to understand it, and the two should feed off each other. I say only as big as needed. What I'm mostly concerned there is sometimes people will go to stock photography sites and they'll purchase the largest of the large version of the stock photography, and honestly, those large versions are generally intended to be printed out on a 10 by 10 canvas or 5 by, like a really large canvas is what they're designed for, not designed for people downloading them on mobile phones over the web. And so what I tell people is stick to images, no wider than an average screen width of 1024 or 1080 for 1080p, like just not much wider than those than the width of those things, because you really want to reduce the amount of time that people spend waiting for the images to load and download on a site. I don't like seeing people include text or logos on the image. The problem is when people then, it might look good on a desktop, when people then switch to a mobile device, the text and logo get squeezed. You can have a logo separate from a background image, but not included on the background image is what I'm getting at there. Stock photos that make sense. And there's an example in the blog post that shows stock photos that don't make sense and some that do make sense. So you might not have, if you haven't launched a product yet, you might not have a great product shot or photo yet. There's some great advice how you can fake product shots and photos. And some of our customers have done that. But the other side is if you pull from stock photography, just don't pull nonsensical stock photography. Use photos that make sense, that give people a feeling, that give people the message that you want them to take away about your brand. And the last one is that's what I was getting to, is fit your message. So the photo should, in these examples, it all fits the message. It's similar to being complementary to the text, but when I hear fit the message, I think about, does the image elicit the feeling that you want it to elicit on the page? Or is somebody going to look at the image and smile? Is somebody going to look at the image and laugh? Is somebody going to look at the image and be concerned about what they're seeing? What feeling are you trying to elicit from somebody looking at your landing page? The images should help fit the message and elicit that feeling off of the landing page. Logos, really quickly. I see a lot of people. You should always ask whoever builds your logo that you have a transparent version of your logo. You can see below, I've got an example of a logo that's not transparent, meaning that wherever you see white there, it should actually be the background color, which is green. In the case of the logo to the right, there is transparency. The background color is gray. The spaces between all the little nooks and crannies of the Toys to Grow logo is gray. But think about the sizing of the logo and how much space it takes up on the page. Too large is a lot like screaming at somebody, and too small is going to minimize your brand and reduce the trust. And so there's a happy balance. I don't have a specific sizing guide saying, oh, this has to be this many pixels, because it really depends on the logo itself, how large it needs to be. But only as large as it needs to be would be my advice for size. And just if it's taking over 40% of the top of the page, then it's probably too large. If it's not readable, if the text isn't readable, it's probably too small of a logo. So somewhere find a happy medium for those things. And again, make sure that you're supplied with a transparent background that you can use when you're uploading it for websites or for competitions. This one's a step. I think a lot of people do this really well based on the emails, the support emails we get about people looking at their pages on their phones and asking questions. But it's important to validate on mobile. That's why in our landing page designer, we've got a way to preview the landing pages on desktops, tablets, and mobile. Now, none of these previews that you'll see, whether it's Kickoff Labs or any other company you might use to build a campaign or website, these previews on your desktop browser are not going to be 100% representative of what it would look like on the actual device. So I still recommend publishing a preview of things, looking at it on the latest iPhone or on your Android device, ask some friends with different devices to pull it up and look at it, because none of the previews are going to be exactly what you would see on the device, but they're close enough to give you an idea. Are the fonts going to be too large? Are the images and videos, do they fit? Is the call to action still discoverable? Does the order the content is in, does it still make sense? Is the page spacing well? Do you still have good white space places, or do you have too much white space on mobile? These are things to check for on mobile versions of your pages, and just think about it. Like it's important to think about. You'll get about 20 to 40% of your views on your campaigns are going to be from mobile devices. So it's a large chunk of people, and it's only going to get larger. And so it's worth taking the time to make sure that you design it, and with all the screen real estate, when you shrink it down. The other thing that I think people discover when they shrink it down a bit, which is useful to see, is that paragraph of text that may have been just a teensy bit too long on the desktop. When you look at it on a phone and you're scrolling, you'll say, wow, that takes up an entire page of my iPhone. Maybe I should reduce the text. And that is a good thing. So it's the other advantage to previewing things on mobile is if you're reading the content on the page and you start to say, wow, this text takes up a lot of space, maybe that's a sign to reduce the amount of text that you've got in each of those sections and make the desktop view even more minimalistic and even more, to the point of what you're trying to do for the copy that's on your page. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on copy on this webinar because we're really focused on the design, but it's something else to look at when you're looking at the mobile side of the equation here. Video and animation guidance. So a couple of things here. I put them together. I don't generally like a lot of distracting things going on the page. And what I mean by distracting, background videos. That's fancy. It's nice that some browsers support having a background video instead of just a background image. In most cases, I find that it's distracting. And when people A/B test those against a static image background, the static image background generally performs better than the video background for the A/B test that they run. Now, there are exceptions. There's people who figured out like the ideal background video. Generally, those people are picking a video where it's more of a subtle video in the background and it's not too distracting. In fact, it might even be pleasing to help get the product point across. The other side, the other part of that is for animations, the same thing. You shouldn't have animations on the page where it stops people from reading. So if I'm scrolling quickly down the page and I'm trying to skim for headlines on a page and it takes 4 seconds for a headline to fade in because you've got this really cool rotating fade effect, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I'm not going to take the time for that animation to load on your page. I'm just going to be like, oh, I didn't see any headlines. There was nothing to read. And a lot of people realize, especially for promotions like landing pages, on your site, they skim for headlines. So anything that makes the headlines come in after the fact, when I'm scrolling down the page and takes time, is gonna reduce your conversion rate and slow down somebody's reading. The second thing is that you should not require an animation or a video to explain your product or your offer. It's great when they are complementary next to a call to action as a secondary call to action. But similar to the advice I gave about images, the videos and animations should be complementary to the copy. They should not be required to understand it. I've had a lot of people tell me when I look at their pages and I say, I don't quite understand what you're doing here. And they say to me, oh, well, watch the video. We put the video on the page for that reason. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm sitting here talking to you on the phone. I might be talking, to another client on the phone and browsing the web, or somebody might be doing that in an office where they don't have headphones on. They're not going to press play on a video for fear of the sound. The other one that should have been added here is I generally tell people to avoid autoplay. It disgusts people enough in advertising. You don't want to do it on your pages in general for the design. And so make sure that videos and animations don't inhibit the readability, that they're not distracting, they're always secondary, and they are not required for the explanation of what you're doing. I should be able to understand what the what, the how, and the why from simply reading if I turned off all the images and videos on your landing pages. All right, that was a really quick run through a whole lot of guidelines. But the question is, how do you realistically apply these guidelines, and how can you make changes to a page how can you make changes to a page to get to where you want to go using these guidelines? It just so happens that Laura-Lee and I found one of our own pages that was breaking some of these rules. And we wanted to say what would happen if we did a makeover on that page, and how could we make that page look better as a great practical example to building a great looking landing page. And so with that, I'm going to turn over control of this webinar and the speech to Laura-Lee, and she can talk about the page in question, why, what mistakes we're making on the page, and then the approach she took to redesigning the page as she was going, and kind of using tools and techniques that we've talked about here that anybody can use when they're building a page.
Yeah. So thanks, Josh. So the page that that we found is, can you see my screen here?
Yep,
Okay,
I've
great.
just now made sure everybody's sharing your screen.
Great. So this is the page you're seeing, and this is, you can see it's grow.kickofflabs.com/live. And on this page, I'll point out some of the things that that we might have done wrong here. This was created a long time ago. We've just never come back to this page. So you'll probably see right off the bat some of the things that we've done wrong. And when you think about like taking any of your pages and fixing it up, the one thing you want to really look at is the whole purpose of someone coming to a landing page is to get them to sign up, and the design should never get in the way of that. In fact, it should do the opposite. It should lead them more towards being able to do that and do that effectively. And so when you look at this page, I think the biggest problem here is the background image. Now, even though this background image is it's really appropriate for what we're offering, it makes it really distracting. And then also, there's no really like color overlay on the image itself. So you're not quite sure what is the background image and what is the actual content. You see all these different calls to action throughout the page, and all these bright red arrows that could easily distract you away from like what is the actual purpose. And so that would be the first thing that really stands out to me when you look at this page and you think of the principles that we just talked about. The use of images is really powerful on your page. It also, if you'll notice, since there's no color overlay on this image, it's bringing in all these different colors. You're going to see all these dark colors, all these social sharing colors, the red color from all the arrows, some from the images. We see this blue up here, this pinkish color over here, and then we see another teal color here. So again, there's like a lot of colors on this page. And now images are really great to add like a little pop of color on your page, but you want to make sure that that the color is used appropriately. And here there's just too many colors. So that's another thing. And then the other thing that I really want to point out as another big thing that's happening here on this page is we talked about white space and how important that is for the actual feel of a page. Like when you look at a page and you just add white space, it really changes completely the design of the page. And on this page, you're going to see that like really the content is this white box right here. And there's only just a little bit of white space throughout here. And then also there's only a little bit in between the logo here and this free live landing page review title. Excuse me. So you'll see that like, let me just get a drink real quick, 1 second. So we'll want to fix all those things. We'll want to add some more white space. We want to remove the distractingness of this background image. And we might want to add just maybe a little bit more content and context around what actually we're offering here with this free live landing page reviews. So I'm going to walk you through the whole process that I would go through in creating a new page and redoing this page here. So you should now see I'm logged into Kickoff Labs here, and I'm just gonna, and I'm on the campaign landing page where I'm at. You can see here's the page itself, grow.kickofflabs.com/live, and I'm just gonna create a new landing page to start out with. Now, one thing that I see often with Kickoff Labs customers that are creating landing pages is you might pick a landing page and you feel stuck with that landing page, but there's no limit, especially like just create a landing page, and if it doesn't seem to work with what you're offering, create another landing page. Try different ones. Each one's going to have a little bit of a different feel. So as I was thinking about this page and what landing page template we could use, I actually created, and I'm really familiar with all these landing pages, but still I created a number of different landing pages just to see what the feel was like in each of these. And we've got a lot of really good landing pages. The one that I think that I'm going to choose just to show you today is this one called this Big Picture Zigzag. So let's go ahead and edit this page. So here's where we're going to start out. And I want to focus first on getting the content in here on this main section. And so I'm going to first, actually, I'm going to hide this section because I want the logo to be in here with this group. So I'm just going to hide this here, and I'm going to show you how I'm just going to add that logo in. You can just click in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add our own logo. And now you can see I chose the black one because I'm going to make this a lighter color. So let me just change that right now. I'm going to change this background to just be pure, just white. Now you can see that changed these. So I just need to change the color of the text here, and I'm just going to make them black. So now we've got the start of what we're going to offer. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to grab the name of the title. I'm not going to change anything. Free live landing page reviews. So let's go ahead and add that into the headline here. Free live landing page reviews. One thing I'm going to change here that I'm noticing right away is I'm going to keep the rule of just having one font family here for this one. There are certain cases where, and for this is a good example of a landing page where we actually did pair these fonts. And especially if you're going to do something that's uppercase, like if this is all going to be uppercase, this font pairing with this one is a really good one. But for our case, I'm just going to choose one font family. And I'm going to do Open Sans. So I'm just going to choose the Open Sans for the headline and also the body font.
And what's nice in Kickoff Labs doing that is that those settings on the left-hand side are changing for the entire page. So you don't have to go change each individual font section.
Yeah, so now everywhere on my page, I don't need to worry about the font family anymore. I'm all set. I just clicked here in the page design and I chose the font for the headlines and then the body, and it's taking care of me, for me through the whole page, which is really, really nice. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add, so the design, again, the whole purpose of the design is to lead you to get to the point where you want to sign up. And so I'm just going to add an extra subtitle. We don't have one on this page, but I'm just going to add the why. Like you understand now what we're offering. We're offering free live landing page reviews, but I'm just going to add like a little sentence here describing why someone might be interested in this and why someone might want to sign up. And so it's increase your chances of launching a successful campaign. It's really simple. I'm just going to include that in there. The next thing we see on the page is we have this join us and the day, and that's really important. So we need to bring that over. So let's go ahead, and I kind of want that separated from this section. I want to be able to control the padding and the spacing in between. So I'm going to move this down, and then I'm going to add a new section. And you can add, we've got a lot of content and different content pieces that you can pull into your page. And I'm just going to choose a paragraph because I just want some text. So I'm going to bring that in and I'm going to put it right here. And was join us. Let me just center this. Join us live on, what was it, April 6th, on Thursday, April 6th at 11 a.m. Pacific. Okay. Now, following the principle of, actually, let me do one more thing. Let me just add. So we can see that we have two fields, and I would like, instead of having this inline field, like where it's all on one row, I think that I want one more like this, where they're each on its own row. So let me pull one of those in real quick. Go to the forms, and the form I'm going to choose is this one here. We're going to pull that in. delete this one real quick. So then we're going to change the button color. Just one second, let me grab the color.
And what did you do there? You also changed the hover text of the hover color,
yes.
and you just picked. And this is something I see all the time. People choose two very different colors, and what you did was you just picked a color just down on the spectrum that was slightly darker for the hover color. So it's more of a subtle change, not this dramatic. The button can go from blue to red when you did that, when you hover over it.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So what I did here, this is the hover color, and when you hover over here, you can see how the hover color that I chose is just slightly darker. And I chose a slightly darker color just because I wanted just to add a little more contrast between the white on the text and the button itself. So, and then I want to add one more form field. And actually, let me go back. I'm going to add a new field, and it's just going to be a single line of text input. And I'm going to name the label on this is landing page to review. And the placeholder text is this URL, yourlandingpage.com. And go ahead and apply that. And I also want, I need to add a label to this one as well. So I'm gonna show the form label here, and I'm just gonna say that's an email for the form label. And then the placeholder text is, what's your best email address? So what's your best email address? We'll go ahead and edit that. The last thing that I want to change is you can see how the landing page to review shows up first. I'm going to do that. I want that to show up first right there. So there we go. Now we've got those, and I'm seeing a problem because typically this is a white background or a dark background, and the labels aren't showing up. That's not good. Let me just fix that real quick. Let me just find it. So on any page, if you have some CSS know-how, you can add a style tag into your head, and this will add any styles that you would like throughout the whole page. And so I'm going to do that here for this page, and I'm just going to add a specific style to my labels here. So they show up. You can see now they're showing up that style is applied. Let me just save this. Okay, so now what we want to do is, so you'll notice that the spacing here, we want to look at the white space, and there's not a lot of white space. The other thing that's really standing out to me is, like, do you see how each line is really close together? There needs to be some more spacing done here. The other thing that's standing out to me is the size of this font in comparison to these other fonts. It seems really big. And just really, really large. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just going to add a little bit of space throughout. The first thing I'm going to make this logo just slightly smaller, and then I'm just going to add, click in. I'm just going to push an enter, and I think that's just fine. And then I'm going to change the font size. All you have to do is, if you ever want to sell anything in Kickoff Labs, you just select whatever it is you'd like to change, and you see you have all these options. And I'm going to change the font size down to like 48. I think that looks much better. Do you see how instead of it feeling so large and especially in comparison to this other font, the other text throughout the page, you can see that it's a much better style now. And I'm okay with with these being close together. I want the what and the why close together. I'm okay with that. I do want to add a little bit of space between this and maybe a little less here. So you can see when you hover in Kickoff Labs, when you hover over each of these sections, you're going to see kind of where each section begins and ends with the blue. And so I'm going to click in here, and you can click Design. And from here, I'm just going to add some space along the top. So let's start with 30 pixels, and that feels a lot better to me. And there seems to be too much here. I want this joining us live to be more closely aligned with this here. So I'm going to reduce this down to 20, and that doesn't seem quite enough to me. That feels a little bit better to me. So now those are much closer together. There's a little bit of more proper spacing between each of these. And you can see on the padding top here has a padding of 80, and on the bottom here has 80. And I might want to reduce this down just slightly, like that. I think that's a lot better. So now we've got this top part of this page that's looking a lot better. And I want to add just a little bit more here that kind of walks through why someone might. Actually, one last thing I want to change I'm noticing. Right now we have the default text on the button. I want to change that. I want the button text to say, review my page. It's a more specific call to action. Review my page. There we go. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is in here, I want to walk through in a little more detail how it increases their chances of launching a successful campaign, like how exactly we help. So I'm going to go get unbiased feedback. And I'm just going to type in here, let's see, we have review. And bear with me for one more second here. Okay, so now I've got some text here, and I want to update this image here. So all I have to do is click on the image, and I'm going to replace it. And I'm going to upload a file. And there we go. We've got one here. So there's that one. And then we want one specifically about conversion-focused feedback. Let me grab that text for this one. Okay. And then I'm going to do some design-focused feedback. Let me update these images, and we'll see how this page is looking. Okay, great. So we've got, this top area, as I'm looking at it again, it feels really bland. I'm going to add in an image into the background here. Let's do this one. Just to add a little bit of color to it. So now we have just a little bit of color throughout, not too much, just some sprinkles of color throughout. We've got these colors here. We're going to hide this section, and let's go ahead and hide this section as well. I'd like to change this button. Let's make it a large button. And I need to update the colors too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Done for now. Grab the colors from this button so that I'm consistent here. So again, all I have to do is then go in and put the color in and just go slightly darker. Okay. So now you can see that this button, do you see how the white space, how it feels tight? It feels really close to this other section. I'm just going to add some more padding here. That feels better. I might add just a little bit on the bottom. that looks good. Okay, so now we have the basics of what I would do for this page, which is, and you can see we followed a number of different principles throughout, and some much more consistently. We were consistent with our fonts. We had, there was a readability issue kind of here where there was so much text that you weren't sure quite what to read. It was clear, like you could actually read it here, but I would say with this, we just increased the likelihood of someone actually reading the text on the page. The colors throughout, we were better applying those colors throughout the page versus we've got just a sprinkling of a lot of different colors that don't go together. So we added some more colors. We applied a lot of these principles where we kept the text really simple. And we added plenty. I think we saw white space come up a lot as well. So this is really the basics of what I would look for when like reviewing a landing page, starting a landing page. And there's a number of different themes that worked really well for this page. One that I really considered is that we have a theme where it takes the height of the page. And so this could be for this first part, and there's still this content that we could show below, but this was really the focus. But for the most part, we really followed, most of those design principles. I hope that seeing this applied to an actual page from this to this was helpful, and you could see how I applied it, and as I was building it, the things I looked at and what things I would want changed here. But you can see there's not a lot of content. There's enough white space throughout. And I think this page is a much improved version of this page.
It's hugely improved. A question that I wonder about, if you are, so these images you had here, I mean, clearly there are brand colors. You went ahead and made these images or these designs for us. Let's say I'm coming into this and I'm somebody who just doesn't have like an image to fit in this space. What would you tell them?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of, so if you don't have any images, which I'm sure is probably a common thing, and you don't have the option to create your own, like I did here with these ones, what I would recommend is considering some stock. There's a lot of free stock photo places. One of my favorite is Unsplash. Let me just go there real quick. So unsplash.com. And what's nice about this is there's a lot of photos here, and you can search through them, and they've tagged them really well. So for whatever you could search and find some. With stock photos though, you'll want to follow the advice of making sure that your stock photos doesn't fill stock. You'll want to make sure that like it's really specific for what you offer. And if you don't find one here, there's a lot of other stock photo sites that are free, completely free for you to use.
So in our case, what would you'd search for something like feedback or note taking or something like that? Like you'd think of adjectives for what you're doing.
Yeah. So notes.
I like that.
I might.
The notebook with the pencils, like something like that would probably look decent on the side of the pages.
Yep. And then, or I might even look for like, there's a computer. I might look at like, because they're going to be on the computer, and I would consider maybe something, that has a computer screen. So that's another option. But you can see here that there's a lot of different options here of really good ones. And especially like if you offer something that's much more visually easier to see visually than something like a landing page review, you're gonna have an easy time finding stuff. Whereas for our page, like something like this, a little more abstract, you're gonna have to still get a little more creative, but you'll find that there's so many images here. But you could also make sure that when you do that, like your text also helps explain, like you shouldn't rely just on the images. The images will help. In a case like this, if you didn't have any and you weren't able to find any good stock photos, the second thing I would do excuse me, is I would probably choose a snippet, something like this, where you don't need text, but I could get the same thing across on these 3 sections right here in a really simple way. And it's really compact, and then you can just get rid of the images altogether. So you wouldn't have to worry about the images. That's another option. There's also a couple other options here, like if you did have some sort of image, you could add something like this that, you know, that you simply walk through it. So there's a lot of different visually ways to show what you're doing. There's one where you could even add we have the option to add a, just like an icon. So, you know, maybe it's whatever, maybe we have a lot here. So let's say we just did that one and we insert it. And I want to make that a little bit bigger. You can see you could also use icons instead and you could do that for each of these. And how I did that was I just pushed enter, and then it's here in this icon font. So that's another option if you have a hard time. Let's say you look at a couple of image, you know, free images, and you don't find anything very good. Don't feel like you have to have images there. I consider something like an icon or something like that.
No, that's great advice. All right, so what I want to do is I'm actually going to take over the screen, and we're going to wrap this up. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching this after the fact, I think a lot of you watching it on demand, send feedback and questions to support@Kickoff Labs. We're always looking for feedback on these webinars. We're going to clean up the video a little bit and put together a set of resources, and we'll be sending out a recap to everyone that signed up that signed up on the email box on the design page about these webinars, because we'll have a resource guide for designing great landing pages, and that'll be together next week sometime, and we'll send that out and you'll get the feedback. Next week we are going to be doing live landing page reviews. So you'll see that page that Laura Lee put together on the webinar will be published at grow.kickofflabs.com/live. Soon, and you can sign up to get your landing page reviewed next week. That'd be next Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, if you haven't heard of us, check out Kickoff Labs. We let you set up viral contests in minutes, quickly and easily set up and refer a friend style giveaways, sweepstakes, and product launches. We've collected over 15 million leads for our customers through viral contests, and we hope to collect a few thousand to a few million for you as well. Have a great day, everyone, and have a great weekend. Thanks all. Bye.